we're good. I saw that, but as soon as you... Oh, the newest one, locked. Excellent. The newest, by the way, as soon as you sit down, we have quorum. Selena thought it started at 10. It's okay. We now have quorum, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a special meeting of the Region's Audit Committee. I would ask everyone to take their seats. We do have quorum now. I'd like to call the meeting to order and remind members to turn their electronic devices to silent and vibrate mode. I welcome members to the gallery. I will remind members of our procedures and practices with respect to decorum. No clapping, no comments, no displays of that sort. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no presentations, we have no delegations. The reason I wanted to just start the preamble for this meeting is, as you are aware, last week in the local paper, The Voice of Pelham, there was a series of allegations made by a former councillor, a councillor who took it upon himself to actually resign from council. He felt so strongly. At that time, I reached out to the CAO and asked a series of questions with respect to the impact of those allegations to the region should they prove to be true. The CAO responded to me. I asked specifically if we had received any correspondence from the Town of Pelham indicating that there may or may not be anything misstated on their financial statements. I asked what, if any, liability does the region have with respect to the issuing of debt on behalf of the Town of Pelham. And I asked if the region has any fiduciary or legal obligation to disclose any potential misstatements to lenders, being the fact that we process the debentures on behalf of the local area municipalities. The response I received back from the CAO led me to believe that it was necessary to call an audit meeting to provide staff to get some information with respect to this issue and also to provide staff with some direction. The other issue that has come up is there was a series of documents and reports and delegations that have been deferred by a previous audit committee meeting to be received back by this audit committee after the results of the KPMG audit by the Town of Pelham into the land transaction that was being conducted by the Town of Pelham. It's my interpretation and feeling that there are other issues in those documents and in those delegations and in those presentations that are within the purview of this audit committee and should be determined and discussed prior to the results of that audit coming back to council. So I have prepared a memo asking audit committee to recommend to council that we change the terms of the deferral. My understanding is from our procedural bylaw, we are allowed to do that, to change the terms of a deferral motion and the timing of a deferral motion when new information is made available. So with that said, I have one item for consideration, specifically my memorandum asking for a motion to reconsider, and the motion will be coming up now. Just a second, let me get the motion on the floor, on the screen. Thank you. I would be looking for a mover and a seconder for a receipt of my memo and moving of this motion. Moved by Councillor Petrowski, seconded by Councillor Gale. Speakers to the motion? No. Councillor Burrows.
Not a speaker to the motion, Mr.
Councillor
Chair.
Burrow.
As a new member, I'm a little surprised that we're calling emergency audit committee meetings as opposed to emergency council meetings, and we've been doing that as well. Could you just spend a little more time explaining why you feel that it's the audit committee's purview?
Thank you, Councillor Burrows. Absolutely. As you know, the region issues debentures on behalf of the local area municipalities. Ultimately, on our financial statements, as you're well aware, we act in the capacity as the creditors to local area municipalities. They pay us, and we pay the debentures for certain debentures that we've issued on their behalf. The issue that I have is, and which is under the items for a receipt for information, is with respect to representation and warranties that we have made to the lenders as part of our agreements, and whether we have potentially misstated or misrepresented those. I called the meeting now because our next audit meeting isn't determined to come in until January 1st, because I think that there is more information that we need as an audit committee to receive the other items on the agenda that have been deferred before then. So that's the reason for calling the meeting now.
This item not be brought up at council on Thursday?
So yes, my hope is that the minutes from this committee meeting will make it onto the council agenda on Thursday night. Seeing any other speakers list is open. Any other speakers to this particular motion? Chair Caslin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, you know, you touched on it at the beginning here, but really I want to know if and I want to hear from staff, if they were notified if there was any additional substantial debt or any additional debt or change in the debt request from the region by the Town of Pelham.
Thank you, Chair. I'll throw the question to Commissioner. Commissioner.
Thank you. Through the chair, no, we've not been notified of any changes to their debt application.
Thank you. In that case, is there an obligation by the town to advise the region of additional debt?
Sorry, Chair Caslin, if I may, that might be best considered under when we look at the item for information with respect to the agreement of debt. If we could just get this motion passed first and then we can receive the other items, would that be acceptable to you?
That's fine. You know, it's just the burning question on my mind, but yeah, okay, go ahead.
Councillor Petrowski, would you want to defer your questions until we receive the agreement, lending agreement under items for information?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just as far as to a future meeting of the audit committee, there's no timing. Is that to the next audit meeting? Is that kind of the intention there? It
would be at the call of the chair. The next official audit meeting is scheduled for January of 2018.
And thank you, Chair. The audit that you speak to, we have now heard from a councillor, the now resigned Marvin Junkin, I believe, councillor of Pelham, that there are a number of audits available, I guess, depending on what day of the week you're talking about. But there is apparently a forensic audit, which I found highly interesting, considering all the heated temperature around this discussion of another audit. The audit you're referring to here is the audit supposedly that Pelham was going to do on behalf of its citizens, the all-encompassing audit that may or may not be just restricted to DCs or not, I don't know, but it's that audit that you're referring to here?
Councillor Petrowski, at the September 12th meeting of this audit committee meeting, it was we were made aware that the town of Pelham was undertaking an audit on these specific transactions, and any other questions that were sent to the auditor through an email that was provided to council and the public. So that is the audit with respect to what this deferral motion is referring to. We have subsequently learned that there are allegations that a previous KPMG audit had taken place. My feeling is that the desire by Councillor Barrick, who was not here, to defer it till after those results were in, was so that the discussion could be taken in context with those various delegations and presentations. Ultimately, the one motion that is being deferred or has been deferred up till now is Councillor Barrick's motion that was seconded by Councillor Gale with respect to concerns over Pelham debt levels. So that's why I think that the two items can be, there's 4 items that have been deferred, and including a presentation by Kurt Harley, a presentation by Reiner Hummel, the motion itself, and some other documentation, including the correspondence, the 330-page plus document received from the Town of Pelham. All those have been deferred. It's in my opinion as chair that those items can now be received and discussed separately on other issues that have been brought forward.
Thank you. So my specific question, Chair, then is this: because even some members, or that member who's now resigned from the Town of Pelham, wasn't even aware apparently of that forensic audit and wasn't aware of approving one, is it in order to attach to this kind of amendment motion a request or addition to make sure that the results of the audit include also the results of the publication, the results of the forensic audit as well? Because I'm picking up through anecdotally, hearsay or whatever, that information is going to come out. Is it appropriate that we would, I think the more informed we are, the better we are to come to the final decisions we're going to make, correct?
Yeah, Councillor Petrowski, this is purely a procedural issue with respect to the timing of receiving those other documents and presentations for discussion and for any direction that comes from them. So I would suggest to you that there's probably more information that needs to be forthcoming to make informed decisions and provide direction based on those documents. This is purely a procedural issue to change the timing of when those items can be brought back to committee for discussion.
I appreciate that, but it's semantics, but it's relevant semantics. The motion says audit, which is singular.
And if you see, we're going to be striking out those words and just adding to defer them all to a future meeting. So it doesn't particularly matter which audits are there.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Augustyn?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. When the Regional Council made this particular deferral motion on October 5th, it knew that an audit would come to Pelham before the end of November. That date has now been set as the 29th of November. And at that time, the community wanted, and we responded to say that they wanted to send items directly to the auditor. And those items have been sent to the auditor. So that will form part of that report. And so what I'd suggest, Mr. Chair, is that the Audit Committee and Regional Council wait for that audit report and additional information that will be coming from Pelham staff rather than acting in this way without information. Mr. Chair, you just said that more information would be forthcoming to make decisions. You just said that, and I agree with that. That's coming on the 29th. So I'd recommend that if you want to call an audit committee immediately following the 29th or shortly thereafter, then we would have all of the information and we can live up to Council's original deferral. And so I'm not going to be supporting this, Mr. Chair. I think it's in order to get the information and look at it in total and deal with it then. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments, Councillor Augustyn. Seeing no further speakers, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion before you? Opposed, if any? Oh, sorry, Councillor Burrows, did you want to speak to? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My
the first
apologies.
time I wasn't really speaking to it. Just through you, Mr. Chair, to the CAO, the process of changing a deferral motion after the fact, even at a committee meeting, this fits our rules, does it?
Can I refer that to our clerk, our deputy clerk, if that's okay with you, or whoever wants to answer it.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation to defer was made at the last audit committee meeting, or rather in September. Our procedural bylaw talks to reconsideration of a decided matter. So because this matter is not decided, the audit committee is in control of it, and if they're changing the deferral actions, it's totally within their purview to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as my original question, and our CAO agrees with that position.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burrows. I apologize for missing you on the speakers. I will now call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Thank you very much. The next two items are items for receipt for information. Just for
Mr. Chair, can we have a recorded vote on that, please?
certainly.
Thank you.
That would be within order. We'll do a recorded vote. We'll just wait for Anne-Marie to open the vote. Oh, sorry, I got to sign on. Sorry.
The vote is open.
No, I didn't get signed in, but you can change my vote to you. Sorry, Councillor Augustyn, I didn't sign on in time, and I will be voting yes as well, and we'll have that recorded as well. Thank you. The other two items are motion to receive two items for information. Subsequent to the allegations in the local paper with respect to former Councillor Junkin's statements, I reached out to Councillor Junkin and I said to him that obviously that we were looking at the impact on these allegations to the region, and would he be interested in attending as a delegation. Unfortunately, Councillor Junkin at the time said he had a pre-op meeting. He has surgery coming up and wasn't able to attend. He was able to provide me with correspondence, which allowed him to succinctly capture his particular allegations in the paper. So these are now in front of us for discussion purposes, and I'd look for a motion to receive both these items for information. Councillor Burrows, seconded by Chair Caslin. At this time, I'll open the floor up to questions on the two issues in front of us are the email from Councillor Junkin, as well as the most recent financing agreement between Infrastructure Ontario and the Region Municipality of Niagara and the Corporation of Town of Pelham.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, and since my name is on this document, and I want to know what I signed for, quite frankly. I asked the question earlier if staff was aware of any material change in the request for debt from Pelham, and the response I got was no. Given the information that we now have before us, does staff require any further information to find out if there's any concern with the alleged $17 million in additional debt that is being talked about in the memo from former Councillor Junkin?
Thank you, Chair. I'll direct that to the Commissioner.
Thank you through the chair. Frankly, we rely on the treasurer's certificate if there's a new advancement of debt, and we would be relying upon that if there's new information. If there is an audit that is dealing with this issue, we would want to request that audit as part of our review of it. So if there is more information coming, then we would certainly review that as part of our process.
Thank you. Again, I am concerned because my name does appear on the request for debt, and I feel like I haven't had all the information presented to me that exists. Is there any way that I can withdraw my support for that debt authorization that exists before us?
To you or to legal?
I was just going to say there is no debt authorization currently. This document has already been committed to at the time. All the information that was presented at that time was accepted by the lender. If there's changes in the situation, that falls under, I believe, Section 16, the right of audit on that. And then at that point in time, that's when new information would come forward. So there is the opportunity to for either the lender to request additional audit or for the borrower to provide audits to the lender. It sounds like there is an audit underway that is going to be provided to us, and at that point in time you can make that decision, frankly, with the lender on what's the appropriate course of action. But until we have that information, it's hard to do anything at this point in time.
Well, Mr. Chair, given the information that's before us today, I'm feeling like I was deceived, and I'm sorry for authorizing this on behalf of council. I wish I hadn't have until all the information was presented to us.
Thank you, Chair Caslin. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start off by just complimenting the voice of Pelham and Mr. Junkin for bringing this to light. It took a lot of guts to do that from both parties on that. So my question right off the bat to regional staff through you, Chair, is what due diligence is undertaken by regional staff when receiving debenture requests from local area municipalities? What do we do?
Thank you through the chair. I'll also look for support from Director Chamberlain. We rely on, there's due diligence on the lender's behalf. They undertake their own due diligence. There's something called a treasurer's certificate where the town issues a treasurer's certificate that's supported by the audited financial statements. We ensure that we have the treasurer's certificate that supports the financial information that the lender is relying upon. And we also ensure that we recheck the calculations that are for the ARL. And we ensure that the documentation is appropriate and the bylaws are passed to support that. I'm not sure if I've missed anything else.
Through the chair, those bylaws are also forwarded to our external legal counsel. We are full to reviews all the bylaws and make sure that they comply with all the requirements of the debenture issues.
Okay, so thank you through you, Chair, again. The treasurer's certificate, I don't understand that term, but would that encompass the allegations by Mr. Junkin or the comments he made? Did they miss on it? Because is that our backup, a treasurer's certificate to make sure everything's hunky-dory, for lack of better words?
Thank you through the chair. The treasurer's certificate is also supported by the audited financial statements that the municipality undertakes every year. So there's a the public statements of the municipality that ties into the treasurer's certificate. So they have an independent audit that supports those numbers, and the treasurer's certificate you know, is based upon those audited statements also. And the director will also add.
Through the chair, I would just add the treasurer's certificate is essentially an attestation from the treasurer that the approval of that particular debt does not exceed the provincially mandated annual repayment limit as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So to shorten it down, Chair, through you to staff, is there anything that we missed in here? And I'm not blaming staff, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, is there anything that we missed on here? Or is it possible staff can go back and take a look at our review process to see if there's anything that we can strengthen in the future to make sure we don't miss things like this? I'm not trying to accuse, I'm just trying to ask.
Thank you through the chair. To be blunt, until we actually see the audit report and some of the other information, it's hard for us to know whether we missed something or didn't miss anything. There's not enough information in the newspaper for us to make any decisions at this time. We would need to see the actual audited financial information, or if there was a special audit undertaken, review that report.
So then I would take it that when this is all over, we'll review to see if there's anything we missed or maybe we were perfect. Okay, and Chair, am I allowed to go through you to ask Mayor Augustyn some questions, or do I just put these questions out?
Councillor, it's not appropriate to ask directly another councillor through this, but I would, you can place the questions if Councillor Augustyn chooses to answer, or if he wants to direct it to staff.
I just feel it's fair, but I'll ask you the question.
And it would also be completely up to Councillor Augustyn if whether he felt he was interested in doing that or not, or whether he can or can't.
Okay, so I'll ask you the question, and then if he wants to chime in, that's up to him. So I'm asking you, Chair, has the Mayor or the Town of Pelham misrepresented on purpose or by accident any financial information relating to the $36 million debenture for the arena or any public financial statements since 2008?
I can't answer that question.
So I'm putting that question out there.
I think that is a legitimate question to ask. I think hopefully a full audit will reveal those. Councillor Augustyn, I'm not putting you on the spot, sir. I do recognize that what you are finding yourself under right now.
And Chair, I don't mean to put him on the spot, but I would like an answer to this today, tomorrow, whatever. But
thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you know, there's a lot of people here in the gallery. There's councillors that are asking these questions, and they're responding to, as Mr. Burgess said, you know, a newspaper article, and there's not enough information in that newspaper article. Earlier with the decision, and this committee wanted to move ahead, I said that that information will be coming on the 29th of November. Beyond that, these matters, and as you'll note from the newspaper, and indeed the correspondence that's before us, the former councillor has made allegations based on his understanding of an in-camera meeting dealing with a personnel issue and also legal solicitor-client privilege. I can't say any more than that on that issue. I can say that as I have said, the audited, and staff here have said, the audited financial statements in 2016 have not been misrepresented. They are the statements, or 15, or all the way back. Those are independent audits, and public documents that have come forward from the town are correct. So this, you know, information will be coming. The audit of the parkland dedication and the DC and other items that the committee or the community wanted to hear about will be coming forward on the 29th. And additional information from town staff will also be coming then. So the answer to the question, if the councillor, the next question is, what's there, what are we doing, those kind of things, those answers are coming. So that's all I can offer right now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask you a question then, and if he wants to, but I heard the interview yesterday on a local radio station, and the golden question I feel out there, and I'm going to ask it to you, and I think the public has a right to know. Is it true that there's an additional $17 million in hidden debt the town of Pelham that was found?
All I have to go on, Councillor Gale, is the correspondence from Councillor Junkin in front of us today. Obviously, Councillor Junkin felt strongly enough about this that he chose to resign rather than to continue on as council. I guess that answer will be forthcoming within the audit. My only concern with the audit process that we have been is that these allegations weren't known to this council when Town of Pelham decided to go that route. So the questions that were being asked of the auditor were maybe not fully and wholly encompassing. But nonetheless, I don't have the answer to that.
So then my last question to you, Chair, and you might not have an answer for this one either, but I hear of a number of special meetings of the Town of Pelham. Are all these special meetings caused by the information that Councillor Junkin revealed? And therefore, thank goodness for Councillor Junkin.
Councillor Augustyn, you have 2 special meetings coming up, the 29th and tomorrow, so it's up to you if you wish to answer that question specifically.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. The meeting, I believe the councillor is speaking about the meeting that we do have tomorrow evening. It is to talk about the breach of confidentiality and the way forward, next steps. The meeting on the 29th would have been called anyways as a result of the audit that this council knew about when it made the motion back on October 5th. So it's just so in answer to the councillor's question, there is one meeting tomorrow night where we're talking about the breach of confidentiality. We're going to be hearing from town lawyers about that. It is in open session. But the other meeting on the 29th was to have been called anyways. It's just saying when that meeting's coming with the auditor report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My last comment then will be, the biggest problem I had fighting the Niagara Parks Commission 5 or 6 years ago, or 7 or 8 years ago, was walking a fine line of revealing confidential information. That was the biggest problem I had. I would have loved to spill my guts even to this day of everything that went on there, but it was blown up. I admire Councillor Junkin. I'll be one of the first ones to contribute to a fund if the whole cause for a fight against him is because you can't say this. If he's saying things that are wrong, that's one thing. But if it's just because he can't say things, I have a problem with this on behalf of the public because we have to reveal this stuff. And I would love to start a fund for this guy because I'd hate the intimidation of lawyers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I would remind the gallery, please. Thank you. Councillor Petrowski?
Sure, cut them off before my speech. Thanks. That's all right. First of all, Chair, I want to accept Chair Caslin's apology for signing that because I'm not grandstanding, but I'm going to remind people that a year and a half ago, I was the sole voice on council or corporate services that expressed my concern about this. At the first time. Anyway, you can speak to it later. Maybe you folks were, sorry, I apologize if you were, but further to that, Councillor Maves, my concerns even attracted a code of conduct complaint from the Town of Pelham because of my comments suggesting lack of trust and faith in the numbers. This revelation coming from a councillor only exacerbates that. So I appreciate what the chair has done in trying to retract it, and I look forward, if the revelations are correct, to a pending apology from the Town of Pelham for if this information is correct regarding the 17 million. What I didn't hear, Chair, in response to Councillor Gale's comments from Councillor Augustyn, was a direct response to the notion of potential unreported debt. What I heard was a circuitous response that came back again to the notion of parkland and DCs. So when you play back the tape, you'll always be able to hide behind, you said it was parkland and DCs, and if that's all that's in the audit, it's not worth even lining a birdcage with, because that's not why we had the audit. So to that point, I'm throwing back out there, Chair. Notwithstanding the comment about this 2016 audit statement, I recall that's the one even that was postponed, according to Councillor Junkin, before the numbers looked better. Do we know, Chair, is there any unreported debt with the Town of Pelham other than what Acting Commissioner Burgess is aware of via audited statements, which I think have, and I'll have a follow-up question, very severe legal repercussions of information that formed those audit statements, not by the auditor, had been misreported, not reported, whatever you want to say. So does the commissioner, I can't put the CAO as much on the spot because he wasn't here, it's historical. Is the commissioner aware if there has been, since this news, he used the word new, not new, is there any other unreported debt he is aware of besides what information we had available at the time that this councillor and others decided not to support underwriting this debt? I hope that's a plain and simple question.
Thank you through the chair. We rely on the audited financial statements of the town. So the last set of audit financial statements we relied on, I know of no other debts from there. That there's been the only two issuances of the most recent two issuances of debt is the only ones we know where we passed bylaws here to authorize the debt.
Okay, so when we got our information, thank you, Acting Commissioner, through you, Chair, we got the information that formed the ARL percentage. That represented a snapshot in time based on information that would have been available in audit statements. Is that correct? Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. So I throw it out again, not for, it can be picked up whenever. I'm not asking per se, well, I could ask now if the councillor wants to chime in, but is there any additional unreported debt that this council was not aware of as a result of the information we had and staff had at its best availability, whether it's this Junkin revelation or wherever? That's a question. Now, question hopefully the acting commissioner could ask hypothetically is, whether it's 17 million or 1 million, let's use the $17 million figure. I hope he's taking a crack at this. If he hasn't, I respect that. Would $17 million in debt added on to the information we had in the audited statements affect, it's rhetorical, how would it affect the ARL calculation and outcome?
Thank you. Through the chair, we did undertake the calculation. Town of Pelham would not exceed their 25% ARL if there was $17 million worth of unknown theoretical debt out there.
What would the percentage jump from to what?
What would the percentage?
Since you did the numbers.
Through the chair, we ran numbers a number of different ways related to the 59 million that was in Mr. Junkin's memo, which potentially would be the maximum, which actually represents about $27 million difference than what has been issued on their behalf, would take the town to about 4.4 million estimated debt charges, which is about 23% of their ARL.
All right, thank you. So, I mean, there's the issue of whether or not it exceeds this arbitrary number the province set at 25%. Really, who knows whether that's a legitimate number or not, because it completely ignores extenuating economic circumstances, the ability of the town to attract taxes, pay for things, do fire sales of land or whatever. But I appreciate that answer. What's more obviously important, or what's at stake, is if there is unreported debt, and I hope it's not, it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, but it's a salamander or something. Debt is debt, and I hope we get an explanation. Was there unreported debt? That's what Mr. Junkin's alleging. We need to know if that's in fact the case. But I do want to drill down, Chair, to the terminology around the audit that the acting commissioner spoke to. There is the audit that supposedly the town of Pelham is undertaking, and to correct, I think, a misconception, this idea I heard earlier this morning that the residents had asked for the auditor to be sent the information and the town was complying. I don't ever remember that request, so I don't know how that happened. But suffice to say, is the acting commissioner expecting just the royal audit that is going to flow out of what this committee asked for, or asked, I guess, directly, will the forensic audit that the surprise forensic audit that Mr. Junkin referred to, that even council, he alleges, wasn't aware of, would that be additional helpful information for a staff to be able to properly put together a reassessment of what council needs to know to be able to assess that original debt decision that Chair Caslin has since taken his name off of? What audit are we talking about, Chair, or what audits?
Commissioner?
Thank you. Through the chair, it's hard to answer the question whether the information would be useful or not because we do not know the scope of the audit. But generally, any information may contribute to a clearer picture of it. The financial statement audit that goes on an annual basis would still be one of the key items that we would continue to look at.
Okay, so is a forensic, the difference between a forensic audit, just for the non-CGAs in the audience, and a audited statements, I think they're being done by the same firm. No, they're not. KPMG at Pelham. KPMG is doing the forensic audit, Chair? I can't.
My understanding is KPMG is doing the forensic audit, but their financial statement auditor is Deloitte.
Okay. So the difference between the two in terms of the not the quality, but the status of the information?
So the regular statutory audit is performed under generally accepted auditing standards and in accordance with GAAP as outlined by particular accounting rules for municipalities. So that's an audit of the financial information or financial statements in accordance with a set criteria rules. A forensic audit, the scope is determined either by the auditor or by the person hiring the auditor or a combination thereof. And what they are investigating and how they're investigating it is defined in that engagement. So there is no set standard. It's set by their standards and how they produce or how they perform their audit. But what information they're looking for is really dependent upon the issue. So they're kind of special purpose type of reporting.
So point blank, yes or no, through you, Chair, to the acting commissioner, would having access to the forensic audit be useful? I know he can't say I don't know what you don't know what it is, but you can't say whether it's useful or not until you see it.
That is completely correct.
Okay, thank you. No applause from staff on that assessment. So I have a final question, Chair. As far as what our process is going forward, and we've heard some calculations and everything else, my understanding of financial audit statements, whether you're a private corporation, whether it's your personal tax return, almost the same thing, or a municipality, through you to the acting commissioner, the quality of the audit relies on the quality of the information, correct? So the auditor who performs a financially audited statements can't necessarily somehow pick up or report on information they only can report on information provided, correct? Their job through an audit isn't necessarily to dig into filing cabinets and find other unnamed accounts or anything like that, correct? It's like quality in, quality out, garbage in, garbage out.
Thank you. Through the chair, if an auditor does not believe that they've obtained sufficient evidence to support their opinion, they would reserve their opinion. So quality of the information and the auditability of the information, the reliability of the information are all key aspects of what an auditor would look at. So if they're not satisfied with the information, then they would reserve their audit opinion and would not provide what we call a clean audit opinion.
Okay. That's presuming that they felt that way. So, Chair, to wrap that subject up, what are the penalties that the Commissioner of Corporate Services failed consciously not to disclose debt to the auditor? Because I presume that through the treasurer's certificate or somehow people are signing off, and that is a legal sign-off. Is that fair to say it's a legal sign-off?
Thank you. Through the chair, the penalties. The treasurer would face different types of penalties. One would be with their professional association. Two, the treasurer would face penalties from their employer and 3, they may face civil litigation. You know,
From the public, for example?
Public from their employer or from the from the actual lender. So the person who issued the debt may take legal action also.
Okay, Chair. Well, I will say this. Thank you for all that information. At this time, obviously, we're working with the allegations of one councillor. I suggest that anyone who is brave enough to step down and is doing an honorable job in public service, I have no reason to believe that there isn't something more to it, to his resignation, because I had no reason to believe he would just step down because he was tired of doing the job. I think he was obviously frustrated and concerned with attaching himself to the direction of that council. So I look forward to some of this information being flushed out. I look forward, Mr. Chair, to hearing definitively once and for all if there is unreported debt, and we did not have all the information available to us, and then the explanation for that. But I stand by the remarks I made a year and a half ago to the extent of this, and like it or not, this information certainly puts a smell to this process. And this information, if it's true, wouldn't pass a smell test. So I look forward to finding out whether how rotting the meat is underneath this, or whether it is at all. But quite frankly, it's disturbing, and it's unfortunate, to Councillor Gale's point, that these elected bodies we call ourselves are more interested sometimes in shooting the messenger than shooting the message, and that seems to be the game in Niagara, and it's disgusting. And I look forward to hearing the truth, because that's all we're after, is the truth. We're not after political outcomes, just the truth, so that we have informed decisions, and so that people of Pelham also are informed about the truth, so they know what kind of tax impact they're going to be facing in the future, and what, coming into an election, the real integrity of their elected body is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Petrowski. Councillor Volpatti?
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, my apologies to you and everyone here. I don't like to be late for meetings. I had the wrong time in my calendar, so sorry. I have one question that is in my mind since all this came out, and that is, and I'd like to ask this through you to staff, since when is the financial position of a public body, a municipality, a matter of confidential information? When did that happen, and how does that work? Whoever would like to answer that?
Thank you. Through the chair, the financial statements of a municipality are not confidentially, they're not confidential information.
Exactly. So how can, for example, this councillor, whom I certainly credit with his courage in doing this, because it takes courage to do this, can be blamed, how can he be blamed for revealing information which should be public anyway? It just doesn't, I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense to me now, and it never will. There are things that are confidential that we discuss, property issues, I understand that. But not $17 million in debt, which nobody knows about. Surely that can't be confidential. I really look forward to this being tested in court, because if that's the law now, maybe it should be changed. Thank you.
Councillor Volpatti, you weren't looking for an answer to that one statement, so I'll move to Councillor Maves.
Very much, Chair. I got several ways I want to go about this, but part of what I want to do is, I think at some point in time we're going to have to ask our staff to get a bunch of answers from KPMG, who did the audit, and the Town of Pelham staff. And I think we have a material reason for being interested, and that is because the debt came through the region of Niagara in June of 2016. Now, to Councillor Petrowski's earlier assertion, and to ease Chair Caslin's conscience, I want to go back to when this matter first appeared in June of 2016. It came to corporate services, and there was actually a healthy debate, I want the people of Pelham to know, about this council agreeing to issue potentially $36 million in a debenture to the town of Pelham for the arena. There was a serious amount of debate, and there was a serious amount of concern that was expressed, to the point that we actually moved a motion. It was moved by Councillor, and I'm reading from the record, moved by Councillor Volpatti and seconded by myself, that the town of Pelham, the debenture on behalf of the town of Pelham be deferred to the Corporate Services Committee meeting to be held on July 13th, 2016, so that staff, our staff, could prepare a report that identifies any risk to the Niagara region by approving the report. So Councillor Caslin, Councillor Petrowski, several others, if you go back and think about the debate way back then, we had concerns, we expressed them during the Corporate Services meeting. A vote was taken, a recorded vote, and we lost that vote 11-7. Councillors Caslin, Barrick, Gale, Kenny, who was here on behalf of Port Colborne Mayor Maloney at the time, Maves, Petrowski, and Volpatti all voted to defer it, to ask for more information. Voting against deferring it were Augustyn, Burrows, Campion, D'Angela, Easton, Edgar, Height, Hodgson, Jeff, Squirk, and Timms. So we lost that vote to defer it. And I'll tell you that we then, other questions were then asked, and the answer from our staff were, you really can't say no to issuing this debt. We're so far down the road with Infrastructure Ontario, we're so far down the road with the lender, because it's not Infrastructure Ontario who gives all the money, there's another lender. Mr. Burgess, you might remind me, who's the other lender in this case? Was it Manulife? I thought there was a...
Thank you, through the chair. It's Infrastructure Ontario. However, they will place their debt sometimes out into the market to fund it.
And
we don't know who.
And we don't know. So someone else, either a Manulife or a Sun Life or some of these massive corporations put this money up, and they actually can be municipal lenders. So after being told, oh, you really can't hold it up, we took a recorded vote on approving the debenture, and it was 15-2. Councillor Petrowski and I still voted to oppose the issuance of the debenture. So I just want to reassure everybody and remind everybody that concerns were expressed and attempts were made to try to defer this until we could get to a position where we felt more comfortable issuing the debt. The second thing I want to say is that I'm really tired of dealing with, I think it's, someone could call it the town of Pelham, Penn and Teller instead of the town of Pelham. Because there's so much misdirection that's gone on around
Mr.
this.
Chair, on a point of order, I just ask the councillor to apologize for that.
No, I won't apologize for that. I don't find that out of order, and I'm sure you'll
Sorry, Councillor Augustyn, we're all prone to statements of hyperbole at times when making political discussions. I don't find that a disparaging remark specifically. I think that is just liking to what he is, the councillor's just talking about.
I'll explain that statement. I'm not going to withdraw it. I'll explain it. A magician, magicians like Penn and Teller, the secret of a magician is to misdirect you. I'm going to do a trick, I'm going to do something, and I'm going to over here, and I get your attention over here. So you don't really pay attention to what's happening over here. That's misdirection. And that's what great magicians are great at. And from the beginning of this, when we passed this motion and we moved on with life, and then other councillors became concerned again about it and brought it back up to the region. And the first piece of misdirection was, oh, this is all about the NPCA. And it went on and on. Anyone that raised their head and offered any kind of question about it, it was, oh, it's about the NPCA. Now, I didn't know that Mayor Augustyn had a part in Steve Smith's attack of the Ed Smith's attack on the NPCA. I don't even know what he was attacking them for. I didn't pay that close attention to it. I've been on the NPC years ago, and I hadn't paid any attention to it. But I got accused of it. Actually, Councillor Augustyn withdrew that in one council meeting. Mr. Hummel got accused of it. Other councillors got accused of it. I'm pretty sure Marvin Junkin doesn't care about the NPCA. I'm pretty sure the people in the audience really don't care about the NPCA. I'm pretty sure the people who showed up at an audit committee meeting a month ago who were willing to pay for this audit so that it be truly independent and truly exhaustive don't care about the NPCA. Hopefully now that little misdirection is done with. Hopefully that's buried and gone. The second one is I'm going to sue. Okay, Mr. Hummel showed up and he asked questions. He didn't make allegations, he actually asked questions if you go back and read his report. But of course, as soon as it's over, the statement that comes out of the town is, well, we're going to consider legal action. And of course, they've never pursued legal action because this is how you bully people into silence. You threaten them with legal action. Now, fast forward to this article that comes out last week about an in-camera meeting, and there's a material change in a town's financial position after we'd all been concerned about, and I just told you we tried to defer it because we were concerned about it in June 2016. Now there's an in-camera meeting, don't know why it was in camera, but there's an in-camera meeting and an outside auditor comes in because a new treasurer comes in and has concerns. After 2 to 3 weeks on the jobs, an outside auditor comes in and says there's material change in your financial position. And instead of calling up the region immediately and saying, hey, we may have, you could even say may have, we may have a problem here. Instead of calling Infrastructure Ontario and said that $36 million you gave us, we may have a problem here, and having them talk to the other lender, whoever that party may have been, saying, we may have a problem here. They apparently take the decision to be quiet about it. And if you read the article as I read, and I can only believe, I believe Councillor Junkin wouldn't take this step unless he sincerely believes he heard these things, that they were going to wait until 2018 in the budget and try to borrow additional $8 million. I don't know how that gets you out of debt, but they're going to borrow additional $8 million to cover costs and talk about it and delay the 2017 financial statements until February. So rather than deal with that issue that comes out, and the town is now completely concerned and beside themselves about how much debt are we really in. Is it $9,000, as Councillor Junkin had in here, per household? Is it $2,000, $3,000, $4,000? What's our situation? Instead of just dealing with that, they start to talk about a breach of confidentiality. It's again this, look over here, look over here. No, they don't want to look over here. They want to say, what's going on? We want to know what's going on. And the misdirection's got to stop, and someone's just got to deal with the financial situation of the town. And I don't know if it's Ontario government, I don't know if it's Infrastructure Ontario, I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's someone, I don't know how that works, if a commissioner comes in and looks at them, I don't know. But I know from the amount of emails that I'm now getting from people from Pelham, I've got people from Pelham quoting parts of the Municipal Act to me. I've never had anyone from the town send me emails quoting Municipal Act. It tells me the depth of their concern. So, Chair, I'm going to put some questions out there that I'm not going to ask for a response from Mayor Augustyn. It's not Mayor Augustyn that is here on trial. It's not a trial. So we just want to ask questions, and I think we're going to ask the staff to look into this for us, to definitely get a copy of that KPMG audit, to definitely go through it and talk to KPMG. I hope, and I'd be surprised. Chair, I appreciate your immediate response to the CAO saying to him, have you called Infrastructure Ontario to tell them there may be a problem with the money that you loaned us and the statements that we put forward to you in order to borrow that money back in February? Because I as a councillor, am party to that. Councillor Kazan, as he said, is concerned because his name's on it. So I think at the very least, the moment you become aware there may be a problem, you should be calling the lender and saying, there may be a problem. To put them on notice, because if you don't have a fiduciary responsibility to tell people that, surely there's a moral and ethical responsibility to tell your lenders there may be a material change in the position. So when we do that, and when we do our own investigations, and I don't think we should be put off anymore, when we do our own investigations, when our staff, our own audit committee, get the KPMG report and ask their questions of the town staff to get explanations, some of the questions that I would like added to that list, Chair. I want to know when Councillor Quinlan started as a treasurer. I know it was before June because she appeared here. I'm pretty sure in June, maybe it was in September. I'm not sure what meeting it is, but she appeared here and she said she was new. She said she went in, the article says, and she was on the job 2 or 3 weeks and she knew there was a problem. So she got KPMG to do an audit. I'd like to know when she contacted KPMG and asked for that summer forensic audit. I want to know why their counsel was not informed by her about her concerns and about the fact she went out and contracted with someone to do an audit. Who was informed? Was the mayor informed? Was Mr. Ottaway informed? Did she do it completely on her own? I'd find that to be unusual. I find it unusual that KPMG could ask to do a forensic audit of their books and the council didn't know about it. So I'd like to know how that all happened, who knew. She reported to council with KPMG with her, according to the article, on September 5th. She knew what was being presented. She said, she's quoted as saying, the good news is we can finish the community center, but after that, the news you're going to hear is not very good. So I know she knew what was coming. When did she first find out from KPMG what was in the audit? Who else did she inform before they decided to call the town meeting? So these are all important things that I want to know because, again, when I read this article for the first time, what flabbergasted me the most was how do you get that information and sit on it for 2 months? Maybe nothing untoward happened leading up to September 5th. I don't know. Maybe it's all explainable. But when you find that information out on this meeting of September 5th, and clearly the treasurer found out this information from KPMG before September 5th, why do you morally and ethically not make a phone call to the region, to your creditors, and say, we may have a problem? That's what astounds me, Chair, and that's what I want to make sure we don't make the same mistake. We now know there may be a problem. We should be alerting these creditors, Infrastructure Ontario, that there may be a problem. So, Chair, those are some of the questions I want to know. There's also this information about borrowing the extra $8 million. I'd like to know about this strategy. Have the mayor told the writer in the Voice of Pelham that they didn't try to go out and look for an extra $8 million. Mr. Junkin claims that was the strategy. I'd like to know if the town actually has pursued additional lending, especially for that $8 million or other amounts. I think I have some other questions that I put in my phone. I think that's all I have. So those are the questions that, Chair, somehow I'd like to get some answers to. And I definitely believe we need to move a motion for our own staff to begin to look into this so that we can feel more comfortable. We felt uncomfortable in June of 2016. We still clearly feel uncomfortable now. And let's just get to the bottom of it and forget about threats to sue. Was it in camera, not in camera? Has it got anything to do with the NPCA? And let's just get to the bottom of it so these people can sleep at night. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mays. I believe Anne-Marie captured your questions, although you spoke quite quickly through them. If you can also submit them so she can make sure that she captured them correctly, that'd be great. Councillor Barrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of the questions and commentary have been asked, but I've got a couple as well, just to maybe pick up a little bit on where Councillor Maves left off. With respect to our fiduciary obligation, I think it's critical, and I'll have a motion prepared at the time you're ready to receive it, maybe after they receive for information. That will demonstrate, I believe, we are honoring our fiduciary responsibility. But the agreement, AC C27-2017, a financing agreement, so thank you for adding that to the agenda for everybody to see. Section 12C(a)(1)(4) is the term, termination, and default. That states that the Infrastructure Ontario may terminate any or all of its obligations under this agreement immediately if the town has or may develop financial problems such that default or unusual difficulty in meeting debts or obligations or in providing adequate funds to meet current expenditures may ensue, or has failed to levy the necessary rates to meet current expenditures. So it's critical for us, if the town hasn't informed them, for us to inform them, and they can make that determination on their own. I know Councillor Petrowski asked a couple of questions with respect to the annual repayment limit. I just was seeking a little additional clarity. When we talked about the original report approving the $36 million for the arena, it placed the town's annual repayment limit at 18.1% at that time. And they still have to borrow, I believe, another $15 million. And if and when that goes through, how does that change your annual repayment limit?
Thank you. Through the chair, that I believe with that report, that 18% ARL calculation was for the full amount of the $36 million borrowing. So that would have included the $15 million-ish of unissued debt at that point in time. No, and my director is also pointing out the ARL calculation is done based upon the prior year's revenue. So it's available revenue. And so the town, as the town's revenue goes up each year, the ARL also increases a bit, so it would change each year.
And what's the estimated adjustment, again, if the full 17 million is factored in? An additional 17 million.
Through the chair, I just want everyone to exercise a great deal of caution in terms of relying on these numbers, because I estimated them this morning as a result of the correspondence up to the 59 million. So it's not based on the actual payments, but it's based on the quick functional calculation of blended interest and principal. So up to a $59 million number, I had estimated approximately 23.46% based on the an estimated 2017 revenue, which I don't have that either. So I've estimated revenue, I've estimated blended payment and interest rates because I don't have them all in front of me.
Understood. I appreciate that. And we know there's likely some additional debt requirements with respect to the town beyond this current borrowing in relation to certain public works and road repairs and things like that. So, so that's important information, certainly for us. I want to understand the order of magnitude as well. It's kind of what's been stated. In relation to the town's budget, can you advise what would the equivalent of $17 million be if the same statements were made at the region? In other words, 17 million on whatever the total operating budget is as a percentage. What would that look like if it was the region?
Just so we get clarity on the question, are you saying what is the impact of the repayment of $17 million worth of debt, or what is the impact of $17 million worth of debt on the balance sheet?
No, I'm trying to do a scalable comparator. In other words, if the same scenario occurred at the region, what would that dollar figure look like? It's $17 million is a lot, but for the town of Pelham, you know, it's extreme.
Councillor Barrick, they're doing some back the envelope calculations, and I always have faith in them, but putting them on the spot like that, if you could bear with them.
Yeah, so if there's an additional $17 million worth of debt, as your question, in comparison to the 31 or $32 million that we know is debt, so that'd be slightly higher than, it's, yeah, $31.9 million is their anticipated debt. If there was an additional $17 million worth of that, I'm a CPA, or a CA, which stands for can't add, so I need to use a calculator. But it'd be a 53% difference in their debt, is what you're saying. So if our debt was misreported by 53%, we'd be adding $120 million worth of debt.
Councillor Barrick, I'm sure the calculations will be done. I think you've made your point in terms of the scale and size of
it's a 53% error, I think, is what you're trying to point out.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think that's unhelpful in terms of the scope that's here, and certainly why the members of the public are here. It's an extreme number. What steps would the region take with respect to informing council had this occurred here, or the general public, other levels of government and lenders?
Through the chair, because of this public meeting and because there will be a motion coming forward from this meeting, we'll be notifying Infrastructure Ontario as a tri-party to the agreement of the meeting and of any direction that is provided to staff from this meeting and our council meeting.
Thank you. And then we also heard already, Councillor Volpetti asked, certainly the region wouldn't consider that financial information to be confidential.
Through the chair, I just want to choose my words carefully. We do not consider our audited financial statements confidential, but in certain cases there may be financial information that, for a variety of reasons, may be deemed to be confidential by council.
Okay, thank you. So I have some questions for the town. I just maybe throw them out, and if Councillor Augustyn wants to speak to them today, that's fine, and if he doesn't, then that's his opportunity to pass. So through you, Chair, did the Town of Pelham borrow from their own reserves?
I'll use the same language I used before. Councillor Augustyn is not under any obligation to answer any questions in this forum, but I always leave it to the councillor to make a decision if he wants to. It's up to you, Councillor Augustyn. I am putting you on the spot, but I want to say you're not obligated to respond.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The information that the councillor is requesting will be coming out on the 29th of November as part of what we're looking at for the budget for 2018. At least that's what I understand.
Okay, thank you. And I also understand there's a sale of public property, and I don't know, but my sense is that they'd like to get that revenue in the 2017 year to assist with what their audited financial statements may look like to complete year end. But is there consideration given to putting a hold on selling that public property until some of these answers are clarified with the public, as well as the region and the lender? And or is there consideration given to holding public meeting prior to selling public assets of the town?
Yeah. Please remind the audience. It's a legitimate question. Councillor Barrick, it's up to Councillor Augustyn again. You have the option to respond, sir, if you wish.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. As council colleagues may recall, part of the plan for funding the community center is to sell off land that was purchased in the East Fawn Hill area in 2005. This council, and I remember Councillor Volpetti talking about it, how long it took to get the secondary plan on those properties and other lands in that area, etc. So this has been something that we've been working on for a number of years. The town has did an RFP for sale of lands in the summer, and Collier International won that bid. They are marketing the 18 acres that are available there for $13.9 million is the asking price for those lands. I believe it's they're looking for offers coming due on the 8th of December. When those offers come in, there will no doubt be some sort of discussion, etc. The question of the councillor, would you hold off on selling those lands? I mean, I'd have to raise that with council, but I don't think it makes sense to do that. It's always been the direction of council that we would do that, and the town, to try to get the value out of those lands to help build a community asset. Will there be a public meeting? Certainly we can, that's, let me put it this way. We just recently sold some land. It was announced on the 6th of November at a council meeting. It was 1.48 acres. We sold it for $1.1 million, so $743,000 an acre for raw land. And the purchaser of that land came and presented to council, is going to meet with the Seniors Advisory Committee because it's for seniors affordable housing. 90 units, 2/3 of those units are going to be seniors rent geared to income. So that was certainly done publicly, and I would imagine that we would do the same thing when the bids come in and options are suggested in terms of who that purchaser or purchasers may be for the land. I apologize for the long question, but I wanted to help the councillor with his understanding. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I want to take the opportunity as well to thank, and I know others have as well, to thank the Voice of Pelham for their reporting. And I see there somebody handed out some copies. I didn't get a chance to read the latest version. And as well, former Councillor Marvin Junkin for putting Pelham residents first. And I see that in his email, that's part of the correspondence here today, ACC 26/2017, there's a couple, very concerning statements, and that's why we're having the conversation. I appreciate that. But there's other ones like, for example, number 3, when asked by a councillor to describe the town's finances, the auditor replied, very poor. And then we see, and maybe it's to Councillor Maeve's point, then we see in the paper, again, speaking Monday afternoon, Mayor Augustyn offers assurances that the town finances are healthy. So we're getting, the town is getting mixed messages, and it's just a matter of getting the correct information. And so, as I said, I'll have a motion when ready, perhaps after the receipt of this. I have emailed it to the clerk as well. And I know, certainly when I raised my motion back in the spring, there were distractions, as Councillor Maves put it, with respect to going after the messenger versus the message. And I see that occurring already with former Councillor Junkin, and there was threats of breach of confidentiality and or criminal/quasi-criminal obligations or items that were there. And I know you, Chair Quirk, had some questions, as I did, of Councillor Augustyn with respect to exactly which section was he referring to in law where there would be some kind of criminal or quasi-criminal element to what the former councillor has done. And he quoted MFIPA, Municipal Freedom of Information Privacy Protection Act, Section 48(2), as well as the Criminal Code, Section 122. And both of those speak directly to fraud or breach of trust. And breach of trust is the intent to commit fraud. And so understanding that, and those are the sections quoted by Councillor Augustyn, fraud or intent to commit fraud, is that what he is accusing former Councillor Junkin of doing?
Again, Councillor Augustyn, it's up to you if you want to respond to that question. I think it might be a bit rhetorical, but.
Thank you for the question. We're certainly not accusing anybody of fraud. The sections point to breach of trust, and I think the issue will be, okay, so breach of trust, and it's for disclosure of confidential information or potential alleged disclosure of confidential information. So this is why I've called a meeting tomorrow evening, to Councillor Gale's point. Our legal counsel will actually outline this publicly to council. So I can't speak beyond that, but that's the issue. It's not nothing. It's not fraud, but it's potential breach of trust over alleged confidential disclosure.
Fair enough. Councillor Augustyn. Any further questions, Councillor Barrick? I will look to you. I see Councillor Beatty has joined us today and is on the speakers list. I will look to you after for a motion, unless you have further questions.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to end. I see former Councillor Junkin is here in the room, and I applaud him for what he's done. And you know, don't be intimidated. You've got a lot of support here, and thanks for what you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Beatty, welcome to the Audit Committee. You've seen the agenda, and you're welcome to speak to any of the items on there, sir.
Thank you. Not being a member of the committee, I had an appointment in Welland, so I couldn't be here at the start. Just want to make some comments. First of all, I find significant irony that in July, I was severely chastised by several members of the Pelham Council for recommending a full, open forensic audit to get the air cleared. And apparently, they claim they didn't even know there was such an audit on being undertaken. Significant irony to that. I applaud the questions asked by fellow Councillor Maves with regard to the ongoing activities. I would add a couple. There needs to be the question asked that if this audit was undertaken, whoever directed it to be undertaken, why then was the term of that forensic audit not to include any recognition of wrongdoing? It's baffling to me. And lastly, where the mayor has indicated that he and council will be calling me at the end of November with regard to the ongoing audit that's currently being undertaken by KPMG. I'm not aware of the restrictions and covenants that have been placed upon that audit. Mayor Junkin felt that it was too scoped and not clear enough. I'd like to have some idea of what things are being scoped or terminated in terms of that particular audit, and would ask, because of the circumstance, that those restrictions be lifted. And KPMG in fact complete a full, complete forensic audit to bring all this matter to rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beatty, and thank you for attending this morning. Councillor Gale? Very briefly for a second time.
Chair, I think we owe a lot of thanks here to people, and I guess my conversation right now is through you to the audience. And for them standing up here, but I hope that they show up at the meeting tomorrow night. And if the flavor of the meeting tomorrow night that the mayor mentions is just to go after the councillor for leaking confidential items, that's wrong. And I hope there's an uproar. But I do hope that if he's wrong, prove him wrong with facts. Because I was going to bring up about the December 8th land sale as well. And every now and then we just have to stop on things, and that I've suggested that to a number of people. We just stop. We did it with Burgoyne. We did it with a lot of things. We stop and we look into things, and we wear what we've done wrong in the past, and we apologize for it. But the land sale on December 8th, I feel, has to stop, because there's too many examples we have of government selling things. We can go to the 407. We can go to the Avro Jet. And all these things where they sold things to make more money, and then we were still in debt as things went on. The 407 didn't help our government at all. You know, and I can use every example all the way along. If the December 8th land sale, which I presume is to bail out some of this, although it was planned before, but still it's to bail out some of the $17 million debt, or if it's $1 more debt, then it has to stop. And I hope that these people in the crowd, and I don't know if the cameras can pick up how many people, citizens from Pelham, are here, and all the emails we've gotten. And I look at emails when you send them, whether it's the same email or it's a change of words, because I think it's a ditto, but they weren't dittos. They were the same. They were different emails from different people saying, please help us. And again, I come back to us being an appeal on this. My last point is, we all wear this. From the press that haven't covered this, to the highlights in the paper of the deflections. I see it with the NPCA. My people in Niagara Falls don't mostly care about the NPCA going on. stuff, but people are deflecting things to take it away from this thing in Pelham. You got $17 million in debt. One of the highlight stories this morning on the radio was a $400,000 lawsuit by an employee with the NPCA. Was there anything on a $17 million debt? Not at all. So we got to pick our spots here. I perceive it. As I've said before, I'm not conservative, liberal, or anything like this. I'm not parties or anything like this. But we got to start covering these things. Our local press doesn't cover things like this. And I know they're short people, but this is ridiculous how this has gone on for the people of Pelham. So my compliments to these people showing up. They were so powerful when they waved those checks in the air. But we have to get our act together, and maybe we should stop, and I hope these people stand up for Councillor Junkin. Who is Councillor Junkin, by the way? Is that, right? Well, I didn't mean it that way, Chair. I just mean if you have the facts, sir, I'm proud of you. If you have the facts. If somebody can defeat you with the facts, I'm not proud of you. But then again, stand up, and I compliment you for that, sir. So on behalf of that, I'm proud to be in a room with somebody like that. The other councillors should, if Councillor Junkin's right, should wake up and not be sheep on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gale.
Chair.
Councillor Petrosky?
Just because, it's a very quick question because there was kind of a hanging chad left from Councillor Barrick's comment, which we didn't get a complete answer from the mayor, and that's fine. It'll, like everything else. The comment about reserves, just through you quickly to the commissioner, are reserves something, and I can't remember, are reserves something that are captured typically on an audit statement? Is that level captured?
Through the chair, that they are captured on the statements.
All right. And the reason why I bring it up is because the allegations are the reserves are empty. So that would be hopefully other information that gets flushed out, and the commissioner will update us on when he has that information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I just again like to say welcome, former Councillor Junkin. Thank you for attending, and thank you for your email. I would suggest to you and to members of the Audit Committee that if the allegations included in the email were not accurate, he wouldn't be able to be sued under breach of confidentiality. The answer would be that that would be not true. So I think the Town of Pelham has some decisions to make tomorrow at their meeting to determine, obviously, if they decide to proceed down that road to say that confidentiality was breached, that would lend veracity to your allegations, Councillor Junkin. So thank you for that. This time I'll call the question. All in favor of receiving these items? Opposed, if any? Those are carried. Councillor Barrick, you had a motion that you'd like to provide?
I do. I believe if the clerk has it, I ask her to put on the screen. I'll start reading it. That Niagara Region expressed concern that the Town of Pelham has not advised the Niagara Region of material change in the town's financial position. That the Niagara Region notify relevant lenders that there may be a material change in the Town of Pelham's financial position. That the Niagara Region requests the Town of Pelham share the summer 2017 KPMG audit with regional audit staff. The regional staff prepare a report outlining options to strengthen regional review and approval of local area municipal debenture requests. That the Niagara Region defer consideration of any future bylaws pertaining to the additional Town of Pelham debt until such time that the summer 2017 KPMG audit and other relevant material is shared and reviewed with regional audit staff, and the resolution be circulated to Niagara's local area municipalities and Niagara MPPs. And I believe Councillor Gale was going to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick. You have the floor if you want to speak to the motion.
If I can reserve comment to speak last.
Certainly. Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm supportive of the general motion, but item 4, it sounds very nice, but I believe that there is a process, and if you have a treasurer's report, then you have what you're required to have. And if you're going to start investigating 12 municipalities and not believing the treasurer's comment, I think you're creating more problems than you're trying to resolve. So I'm not supporting number 4, and I'd like it separated out, and I will vote in favor of the other item.
Thank you, Councillor Burrows. We will do that. We'll vote on item 4 separately. In the meanwhile, if you think of any wording that would allow you to support it, please consider it. Councillor Volpatti.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support the motion as it is, and I want to say that the region is not here to police the municipalities in any way, shape, or form, because generally they do a great job with what they are doing. However, when push comes to shove and we have a problem, as we seem to have here, it behooves us to get on board, do what we have to do to get to the truth and to assist the residents of this community to go on with their lives and stop this, just to go on with the lives they want to go on with and leave all of this financial situation aside, because we should be able to trust our local politicians and what they do. So while I don't approve of the region interfering willy-nilly, we have to take the lead when it comes to situations like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Volpatti. Councillor Petrowski?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I respectfully disagree with my councillor. I think as a regional councillor, and by way, and I apologize for Councillor Maves not including him earlier in his vote with me against the debenture, but when we saw from the votes for who on both sides, the original deferral and then the final, what we saw as a pattern of all the mayors, and we see it too often in here, and you folks don't get to see it, but I have to live with it. Too often mayors all clumping together. Of course, they have their own meetings, so why wouldn't they clump together and support things? So I think that it behooves the regional councillors, maybe less the mayors sometimes, from standing up, and you call it policing. Our job is oversight. And you folks have also elected regional councillors, not just your municipal councillors. And I get calls from all over the region, whether it's from my own community in St. Catharines or elsewhere, and they are always asking me issues really regarded to their municipality and oversight / policing. And if you can't get your answers at City Hall, then you come to the next layer up and hopefully you get your answers here. And if you don't get your answers here, good luck with Queen's Park. But anyway, so I look at our job as providing that policing, especially with the way we run ourselves, because we have 12 mayors who almost on a whole form quorum on their own. Just watch the votes, folks. You'll see a lot of clumping of votes sometimes. And I'm not saying that in their absence they can play back the tape. Frankly, I don't think mayors should even sit on regional council because I think they're in a conflict. Having said that, I'm surprised that Councillor Burrows can't support the fourth item, because all it says is a report outlining options to strengthen. The report can come back saying there are no options to strengthen. So there's nothing kind of sinister or hidden in that. What I think is important, though, and Councillor Barrick flushed it out a little bit, and we're all, some of us to more degrees or less, are concerned on behalf of the folks of Pelham, Mr. Chair, with regards to the pending sale of land, not to mention the arena lands, and I think the last piece of municipal property, that there's a term we use in sales called sandbagging. And if I've got my sales done for the month of November, my son sells cars at Volkswagen Hart, so a plug for him. But anyway, if he's got his quota in and there's about 4 people walk in the door at the end of the month, sometimes we are tempted to push those numbers into the next month because we've already got our maximum bonus. I think where the system falls down is the commissioner can only deal with the information he has in front of him, she has in front of her, the staff. And I think it is relevant, whether it's land sales or debt coming, we could approve something the next day, a massive amount of debt could hit the books. And it was sandbagged. And I don't believe for a moment that municipalities don't maybe sometimes practice sandbagging too. Especially with the comments that Councillor Junkin made with regards to the suspension of release of audited statements, which is just completely outrageous on its own. But I hope perhaps that the commissioner and the CAO and anybody else who can put their mind to it can give us some ideas, because again, going back to Councillor Volpatti's statement, I think it is our job to police for you folks. And besides, we are underwriting this debt. And should there be a problem, we own it. Just like if somebody co-signs a loan. So I think it's a great motion. I'd like to add, though, Chair, to the 6th point, to include the circulation, not just the LAMBs, the local area municipalities, and Niagara MPs. I'd like also to add the provincial ombudsman and the provincial auditor general as well. I understand the commissioner might be, acting commissioner might be informing IO. Do we want IO on there as well, perhaps? Or is that understood? I think it's in order to make sure the Ombudsman and the Auditor General are added in that circulation list. Because I believe with the current challenge to the Councillor with regards to confidentiality, and by the way, to that point, it's confidential until such time that someone who says it's confidential is confidential, and I'm sure we're going to hear potentially that information shouldn't have been. But you're strapped with it until you get out of it, and that's the nature of this corrupt system that we're...
Councillor Pachowski?
Well, I say corrupt, broken.
Caution.
No, I mean, but when you label somebody something...
Councillor Pachowski, I heard you offering a friendly amendment,
yes,
and I was just trying to capture that before we got on a different tangent.
Right.
Would the mover and seconder consider those two circulation friendly?
Ombudsman and Auditor General? Sure. Okay.
So, thank you.
So Chair, it's... you know what? This is... If it weren't for the people, and we have a responsibility, not politically, we just have a responsibility by virtue of the hat we wear to stand up for every municipality. And in 7 years, we have had to stand up for all sorts of things. And yeah, are there political slants to everything? There obviously is. That's why they call ourselves politicians. But at the end of the day, if we didn't have the information that we needed, then hopefully this process will provide, Councillor Gale, I think, said, so they can sleep at night. That's what we're all after, and I'm sure that for our taxpayers across the region and for the taxpayers of Pelham, everyone wants to know what are the real facts, what are they looking at in the future, what is the tax impacts, and we certainly have the right to know if we're going to be owning kind of more debt down the road because we're going to have to maybe potentially bail somebody out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Maves.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate the motion. I agree with most of it. I'd like to offer Councillor Barrick a friendly amendment on number 3, where it says that the Niagara Region requests the Town of Pelham share the summer 2017 KPGM audit with regional audit staff, and I would add and give permission to KPMG to discuss all aspects of that audit with staff. So rather than just get a PDF of the audit, I'd like our staff, if they have questions of KPMG, to be able to talk to KPMG about anything they want to ask them about that summer audit. And so I'm just asking that the town not only ask them to share it, but permit them, because KPMG may feel like the town's the client and they need permission from the client to be able to speak about the audit with the region. So I'd like to add that in number 3.
Do you want to speak to that, Acting Commissioner?
I was going to help the clerk. So I think we need to say that.
How is that, Councillor? Is that acceptable to the mover and the seconder, Councillor Barrick?
Yeah, just for consistency, I'm clarifying regional audit staff to discuss.
Pardon me? Regional audit staff. Regional audit staff? Councillor Gale? Councillor Mays, anything else? I'll wait for the chair. So Councillor Mays just finished his questions. It's Councillor Augustyn.
Thank you. Councillor Augustyn, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First point, I would like to move deferral of 1 and 2 because this is a rush to judgment based on rumor and hearsay.
There is a referral motion for item 1 and 2. Do we have a seconder?
I guess a deferral.
Sorry, my apologies, yeah. Councillor, a deferral. That was 1 and 2. You need a seconder for that? Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. So I'd ask that those be voted on separately, Mr. Chair. Again, I think we just heard Councillor Petrowski, and he said, and Councillor Volpatti, they said, we want the truth, says Councillor Volpatti. Councillor Petrowski says, we want information, and we want to know the impacts. And Mr. Chair, it's going to be coming on the 29th of November with the audit report and additional information from staff. Number 3, Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to abstain from voting on, and possibly 5, but certainly number 3, because it may be not legal for me to vote on that.
I think we'll vote on all items separately, Councillor Augustyn, and we'll do them in order so that you can abstain.
Thank you. And I would ask...
Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Augustyn, is item 3 and you started saying...
Possibly 5.
Okay.
If 5 can be amended to say, until such time that relevant material is shared and reviewed, I can vote on 5, but I can't vote on 3 at all.
Sorry, Councillor Augustyn, it does say that. Sorry, what were you... You asked for it to say until such time as other relevant material is shared and reviewed?
That relevant material. So until such time that, under the word defer, relevant material is shared and reviewed.
So you're looking to delete the words the summer 2017 KPMG audit?
Yes.
Okay, so we need a seconder for that motion?
It's not friendly?
Sorry, I'll ask if it's friendly.
No, sir.
Councillor Barrick is saying that it's not friendly, so Councillor Augustyn, we'd look for a seconder for that amendment. Seeing none, we'll vote 3 and 5 last, so you can sign out and abstain at that point.
I'll have to abstain, I apologize.
Any other further?
I think just in general, as I said, I think with respect to colleagues, colleagues have asked a number of questions, the community is asking questions. This is as a result of information coming last week, which hasn't been shown to be true. At this point, it is hearsay. And so I would ask that, as I did earlier, and I know I acknowledge, Mr. Chair, that I lost that vote to defer it until after, but I believe that Audit Committee should be making decisions based on facts, based on information, and I think by expressing concern, notifying lenders, and circulating to area municipalities, etc., the Audit Committee would not be doing that. That you would be doing this based on, as I said, rumor and hearsay. So that's not what not what people expect of an Audit Committee. People expect information, and that information is coming, as I said earlier. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, I heard the councillor say that he lost the vote for a deferral. Did I miss it, or did he not even get a seconder for his motion?
He did not get a seconder.
So there wasn't a vote.
No, sorry,
Lost
Mr.
his
Chair.
appeal to, I think he said lost his appeal to defer.
No, I apologize. At the beginning of the meeting.
Ah.
That's what I was alluding to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only comment I would make, Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair. I have another amendment, another point 7 to put on this, and that's brought on because of the conversation that Councillor Barrick brought up and I brought up about the land sale on December 8th. And further, before I give this amendment, I want to compliment Councillor Beatty. It's hard to be a regional councillor when I can't experience, but when your whole town council is against you. And I thank you for standing up, as well as Councillor Junkin, for what you've done, because I've read in what Councillor Junkin put down, what you went through and that. So thank you for standing up for your people. So my amendment, Chair, is please don't clap if that's what you're about to do. Part number 7, I'd like to put in here. I'd like to include a request to the Town of Pelham to hold a public meeting with 2 weeks' notice prior to any decision to divest of land. I put the 2 weeks' notice there so that any city can't just come up and say we have a public meeting in 2 days, and these people can't get there in that. So if you want to repeat that again, for the Town of Pelham to hold a public meeting with 2 weeks' notice prior to any decision to divest of land. That's a request. I know we can't demand, but obviously, and I go back to Councillor Volpatti, who's the chair of our Burgoyne Committee.
Gale, sir, do you have a seconder to that motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I need a second.
Councillor Mays. Okay, so you can speak.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Obviously, Councillor Volpatti's involved with the Burgoyne Bridge and all the other things we've looked at, and we just open it up. You criticize everything. Everything's on the table. We look cross-eyed at everything we've done from scratch, and that's what we have to do here. So that's why I think that they ought to look at the December 8th land and everything there, and it might be justified, but everything should be on the table. So thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to do this 2 ways. Would the mover consider that a friendly amendment?
That's true, that's fine.
Okay, so we're going to consider that a friendly amendment. Sorry. Okay. It's just I waited until Emery had decided to type it all out. We still speak to, you can still continue speaking to it, Councillor Maves or Councillor Augustyn.
I can't get on, and I just want to, in fairness to something Councillor Augustyn said, I'd like to do one other very minor amendment, but I'll do that once we've dealt with this one.
So go ahead, Councillor Gale. You still have the floor. Okay. Councillor Maves? Sorry, Councillor Augustyn?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the suggestion from Councillor Gale, Councillor Barrick. So I'm supportive of that, and I think it's a good conversation to have at Town Council, so I will be supporting that. It may not end up being exactly 2 weeks, it may, or it may be 3 weeks. So, but I think it's an important conversation to have. We have been talking about it already, but not in this detail, so I will be supporting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Augustyn. Councillor Maves.
Thank you, Chair. To some of Councillor Augustyn's comments and to reflect most of my comments earlier, the first line says the Niagara Region expressed concern that the Town of Pelham has not advised the Niagara Region of a material change. It should say the Niagara Region of a potential material change in the town's financial position.
So that would that be considered friendly?
Yes.
The word potential.
And just to that, I continually use the word there may be in my earlier comments.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Maves. My apologies.
In my earlier comments, I continued to say people should be informed that there may be. So I think that fits in with what I said. And I do believe that if there isn't a fiduciary responsibility to do that, there's a moral and ethical responsibility to do that. And so that fits with my earlier comments that whenever they became aware in the first place that there may be a material change, that they should have been forthcoming with that. So it reflects Councillor Augustyn's comments and my own. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further...
Chair, if I had asked to reserve comment.
I apologize, Councillor Barrick. I was about to go to you after Councillor Burrows put his hand up. Councillor Burrows?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a clarification on number 7. Is that on this particular land issue, or is it ongoing forever for the Town of Pelham? And maybe we already have public notice.
I think the wording of the motion as presented says to any decision to divest land. It's purely a request to the Town of Pelham, so I don't think it's in perpetuity. I think it's specific around this issue, and I think the mayor...
And I think every municipality should have a policy about that anyway.
I agree. Thank you, Councillor Burrows.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Barrick, you have the...
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Chair. And it's been a very productive conversation, I think, around these. But I want to highlight, I know Councillor Augustyn noted his concerns with the motion with respect to it's kind of based on hearsay, I think is what he said. But in fairness to the committee, we haven't heard anything to the contrary from the town, and that's the biggest indicator of the concern here. So we're expressing concern. We haven't been advised of a potential material change. We're following our fiduciary responsibility by notifying relevant lenders there may be a material change. We're requesting information, as we should, which is responsible. We're asking staff to prepare a report to outline options to strengthen regional review and approval of local municipal debt, and deferring any consideration of future bylaws pertaining to adding to the town's debt and the region's debt until we get some of these answers. So, you know, I'm biased because I moved the motion, but in my view, from a fiduciary responsibility, it demonstrates we are being responsible and diligent with how we're handling this matter. And I don't think it's fair to say it's purely based on hearsay. There's a lot of information and some history here that goes well beyond former Councillor Junkin's resignation. So adding everything in together, I do believe this is responsible and allow us to move forward in an appropriate manner. Again, treating the town of Pelham as municipal partners, and I hope that they view the region as the same, that they view the region as a municipal partner and provide the information that's being requested. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrick. We've had a request to vote on these separately, and I will be putting items 3 and 5 last to accommodate Councillor Augustyn's request to abstain, and to abstain you have to sign out, Councillor Augustyn. CAO, just one final round.
Thank you, Chair. To committee. So the way I read, and as you've described regional audit staff, just give you disclosure. So what I will do with this motion is make the Director of Internal Controls and Organizational Performance directly responsible for executing this direction. I don't want to put financial staff who submitted applications in a conflict, so it'll be led by the Director.
Councillor Podolsky, quickly to that point.
Yeah, no, I just wonder, because the timing issue, the comment on number 3 says about the summer audit. We now know it exists, so I presume that we would be getting that on or before the November 29th information as well. It doesn't have any timing on that.
I think the motion is to request the town of Pelham share it with us. If they choose to do it, it'll be at their we're requesting it, and our staff will reach out to them. If they choose not to share it or share it at their own leisure, we can't compel them.
Okay, well, I know, I appreciate that. Well, I, for one, hope that that would be by the 29th or sooner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we're going to break these motions down. I'm going to call them in order and call for a vote on item 1. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Item 2. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Item 4. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Item 6. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Item 7. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Councillor Augustyn, I'm going to call items 3 and 5 at this time.
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, you recommended that I log out?
Well, if you're sitting at your desk, you're voted as a no vote if you don't vote.
Okay, so, thank you. I've signed out. I understand the logic. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Item 5, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Thank you, committee. At this time, seeing no further business, I'll say our next scheduled meeting is January 20th, 29th, 2018, or unless called by the chair. Thank you very much. And thank you, audience, for your limited participation.